Hey, I'm Tony K. Welcome to Transformation School. Now we'll look at transformation from vehicle mode to robot mode. This white bird fits loose on his shoulder, but is tight on our impromptu vehicle storage. I always start by removing this safety bar. The easiest way to do that is pop these sections apart here, and we can unpeg one side and unpeg the other side and unpeg this from the bottom and set this aside until we're ready for it in robot mode. Pull out our MP10 Spike, MP22 Daniel. This part here has already come unpegged. I do have a little trouble keeping this pegged in. Not that much trouble, but a little. But we're going to unpeg it now, and the other side as well. And then this blue side piece is connected to these silver bits, connected to this white section in the center, and that is going to slide up on the light gray plastic around it. In a couple reviews I've seen, the reviewers swung the legs out together. Sometimes I like to separate them right here. And we've got a couple of tabs and slots, including one at the front bumper. You can swing those out one at a time, or you could swing them out together. We can finish off the legs while they're the hot topic at the moment. There's a hinge right here, and I'm going to pivot these two sections. We untab this tab from this slot, and also this tab from a slot up here. We can swing that closed. This is going to clip down, but during our transformation it might come undone, so let's leave it undone for the moment. And on this ball joint, let's rotate it around. We have to angle it a bit so that we can get a full rotation on it. There's a little tab that sticks out here. In vehicle mode, it comes out this way and fits into the, we'll call it a safety step, as if you were stepping on it to get into the buggy. The section fits right in there. But during robot mode, this little tab fills in the side of the leg. As a matter of fact, let's leave this up at about 90 degrees right now as we rotate this in. And before we fold this section down, let's fold this on this pin here. We'll fold this flap in. We want this flap to fit in between the gray parts of the wheel and the blue of the leg. And now we're going to work on snapping this piece in over this ball joint that we looked at just a second ago, while also trying to fit this top tab in behind the wheel into the gray area. We can see a little notch with the shape cut out. And that can require some maneuvering of this piece on the screw as well as the ball joint, so that by the time we are done, this is flush with the side of the leg. You know what? I've got that part almost flush, and I've got that tab almost in behind the wheel. I'm going to call that good for now. Let's try the same thing on the other leg. We're going to untab here and here. Our foot came untabbed. That's okay. We're going to rotate on this ball joint. And now the screw in here, we're going to bring this flap into the leg. I'm going to twist this piece around a little bit more. And then on this ball joint, I'm going to fold that down. And on this hinge, I'm going to bring this panel up. And then continue rotating on the ball joint a bit. Before I get too close to the wheel, we'll fold this flap in. Now we just start bringing panels down and into place. We've got the tab that we want to fit behind the wheel. We also want to open that up to see. Fit this opening over the ball joint, which should give us a nice clicking, locking in sound. And then it just takes a little finagling of the ball joint and this screw here to get this tab in behind the wheel. So next we just take care of the heels and the toes. We'll fold up a piece that holds the gun, and then on this top pin, and it's a very stiff pin at that, fold the toes out. That happened. Let's take a look. That was the side piece of the foot coming untabbed. we were going to do that. I'm going to brace that with my other thumb as I fold the toe forward. Stiff pin. This is a stiff pin here for my toes. So trying to rotate my toes up, cause this side of the foot to come untabbed. The foot, on the other hand, is pretty loose. Not a problem, I don't think. So let's fold our steering wheel up, fold our heel back, bring our toes out, untab our foot. You know what? I always skip this step for bringing the bumper down because I don't like the clearance issues on the foot. I'm going to bring my whole leg assembly back. And now on this screw, we pivot. And in order to get this panel past all of these gray pieces, you gotta pull it, put some torque on it, and now it's past there. And it can rotate around. And up into place. It'd be the same on the other side, but for the rest of this review, we're going to look at this with this one down, and my preferred method, leaving it up in place at the knee. You can see it both ways. Figure out what you like. But up at the knee, I don't think it's any bit of an eyesore, and it certainly saves this whole section the stress of trying to fit this wide little bit past this part of the foot. Fold the headlights down. And those can be pretty stiff too. Leaving those up really doesn't hurt the aesthetic too much. Let's look at the upper body. This upper section slides down into the abs, but during transformation it might come undone several times. So you could certainly save that for a last step. Next I'm going to fold the seats down. And these hands don't peg in very well for vehicle mode. Hands peg here. The wrist has a hole that pegs in up here, but they don't hold. So they came undone. That is okay. Also, from vehicle mode, this gray section of the shoulder pegs into the dark gray section near the base of this support bar. But this one on my right shoulder doesn't peg in very well. Left shoulder does. So that's come undone. No worries. Rotate this up. And again, we took this off early on in the transformation. I'm not going to bother with trying to transform this bit through all those bars. Totally unnecessary. So we'll bring our motor out. To get clearance through the support bars, we can turn it. Bring those bars up. Turn our motor back into position. Now, two reviewers, I think it was Ben's Collectibles and Emgo, mentioned plugging or tabbing or pegging the motor in to the back, but nothing on my motor is pegged into the back of the figure. So I'm not sure if they were just using those words loosely or if something on my figure is not lining up as it does on theirs. But the motor just comes up here and pretty much sits in position. I've tried a few different alignments. I've tried having it lower on the back. I think it was Emgo whose silver tailpipes were really low and you could barely see them over the figure's shoulders. And I think those looked really good. But overall, I like having my motor up a little bit higher, and that's going to allow the crossbars to sit nicely underneath these two shiny silver sections. With the motor lower, those crossbars might sit above there, or it might run right across them. Next we need to bring our shoulders up, and this is the one that tabbed in really well. Right up underneath the seat here, there's a little light gray section that is part of the shoulder, and that is tabbed into the dark gray. And it pivots on the same hinge as this support bar. I'll bring that 90 degrees from where it was. The other shoulder will need to be out as well because both are connected to the same dark gray piece that slides down. And those tabs that were tabbed into the dark gray will now tab into the top of the chest. straighten out my arms and bring them down. Turn his head around. My motor has gotten flopped out a little bit, getting a little tangled up with the support bars. Bring our support bars, make sure those are up above the motor. Fold our motor back where we want it. Now, with the motor lower, it seems like this section open underneath his head is meant for this little round bit on the motor to fit into. Doesn't really need to fit in there, especially since that might affect his up and down head tilt. Where I position my motor, a little bit higher, it does tend to block his upward head tilt just a little bit, not a whole lot though. I've got my support bars down, resting on the sides of the motor. I slide these sections close to the fork here, and we'll plug this back in, and then tab these two crossbars together. My motor is just sitting a little bit lower than where I'm looking for. There we go. My crossbar is lined up well now. So now these are tabbed together. It's holding this section that we just added into place. You can fold up the sides. And our transformation is all done. This foot piece just tabs in sometimes, untabs. It just happens. It's removing the toy. Straightening up his arms. He has a wrist pivot, but not very necessary as he also has a forearm pivot. I really like that forearm pivot. Now for transformation back to vehicle mode. Let's turn him around. We'll undo this middle section. And that piece fell right off for us. It knew what we wanted. We're going to bring the engine down a bit, keeping the support rails up. Turn our engine over about 90 degrees. Let's turn our head around. Can bring this support bar down a bit. I'm going to turn our figure to the front so I can point out that we untab the shoulder from the chest and the whole thing slides up. We can rotate these down to try to peg them in. Let's see if we can get a close-up. On camera there just seems to be a whole lot of kibble in the way. But I've got a rectangle in the dark gray. I need to rotate that light gray piece. And that one popped in nicely. This other side I tend to have more difficulty with. Okay, finally got that pegged in. Let's extend our motor up. And the arms, they're going to come tabbed in and untabbed so many times. So we will take care of the legs and come back to the arms. Rotate those pieces up and out of the way. I suppose I'll fold the seats up now. Oh, and our midsection has already slid up. Not a problem. Let's collapse the toes and the heels. Bring the steering wheel out. And bring this clip out for the gun. We'll tab in this bottom foot piece. May or may not come untabbed as we continue transforming this. On the hinge at the top, we're going to bring up this section about 90 degrees. And then on this ball joint, as well as this screw, we're going to work on swinging this section out and around. We're also going to work this section back and forth just to get this whole dune buggy safety step section over the side of the leg. Next, let's fold this panel along this hinge, or unfold it I should say, and then on this ball joint we'll bring the side safety step onto the side of the leg. Open that up a bit. We've got a tab here and a tab here that are both going to tab in at the same time. And for the other leg, let's unfold this panel. Bring our safety step into the side of the leg. And this little tab section fits inside the safety step. And next we tab in here and here at the same time. On my figure, this one doesn't slot in all the way. That might be because there's too much paint in the slot or maybe the tab was molded just a little too long. It hasn't seemed to affect transformation or anything though. And now, as covered in our previous transformation from vehicle to robot mode, I only did one of these bumper pieces so that you could see it, but I do not like this clearance issue here. So whenever I transform this guy, just for the safety of my plastic, I'll be leaving his bumper by his knee. So I've got to stretch this plastic out and over. Let's go back to this side of the figure. We're going to bring the legs in. In fact, we're going to come back to this side again. During transformation, we've got 2 pivot points on the knee here. I find that it helps line things up when the knee is not tucked in. Here it's tucked in, here it isn't. But I think during the final transformation, it does get tucked in. So we've got a slot here and a tab right up in here underneath this screw. This heel spur section fits right along the center console area of the buggy mode. It covers up this little shifter stick, but it never quite fits into this little rounded area. It's like this is rounded out on both sides for the heel spur, but the heel spur never comes back that far. So we're going to try to get our leg into place, keep this lifted up a bit, and looking from the bottom, tab, side of the body. Doesn't seem to be a very secure tab, doesn't seem to click into place, but maybe that'll change once we get the other side up. So I've got this tab in already, and then we tab together the front half of the car and the front bumper. Sides are still good. Next, let's get these arms tabbed in. Oh, now this side is usually tabs in easily. I guess maybe that's why it came untabbed sort of easily. There, I got that back into place. Straighten the arm out, fold the hand in, and we want our elbows turned out, but our hands turned in. There we go. And now, pegs for the hands, pegs for the wrist. This is the peg hole for the wrist, but they do not peg in very securely. Let's put our safety bar together. Hold those together. I'm going to slide this towards the back of the car, just a little bit. Bring the peg and the hole together, and then give them a little squeeze on the sides while just holding them in place in the middle. Then I'll bring these corners down. It fits nicely into place. And then our last step, sliding the top section of our motor in, tabbing the sides, this blue peg into this blue slot on both sides. Now, my motor seems to be pretty straight and squared off. This gray piece meets this safety bar, but this gray piece goes way off to the side. I think this gray piece and these white pieces might not have been glued in straight. They seem to be glued on to the blue section here, but hardly noticeable, easily forgettable. Forget that problem is there. We'll do my little birdies up again. Little birdie on the back. Let's put the green one over here. Now I hope these birds will fly away once they start the buggy up, because being that close to the motor, they might get a little cooked in my imagination. Don't need to push it in too far. Less risk of breaking the peg on the bird. And put in the machine gun. I like to bring my handle in sideways and then turn it forward into position. And my last little bird. There he goes. Oh, and the headlights. One thing I find hard to ignore is that this front bumper doesn't quite lock into place. Without forcing it, it'll come up just that far and stop. That upward angle might be a good design. Seems like straightforward would be more accurate, more practical, but this thing really does move around a lot. Overall though, I think this figure is fantastic. I've owned 4 X-Transbot figures. One was their knockoff of Jazai Toys Power Glide. One was X-Transbots Ollie. The third is Apollyon, and now this is the 4th. And their knockoff of Power Glide was fine because Jazai Toys did most of the engineering for them. Their Ollie figure had a ton of problems, and you can find my Ollie mods, fixes, and review in my YouTube channel. Maybe I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. And Apollyon is pretty good, but this figure is really gosh darn good. I don't know what figure I might get next from X-Transbots. They've done a lot of good looking figures, but I've got most of my money going towards Fans Toys. In fact, X-Transbots is doing a version 2 of Ollie so that they can fix all of the mistakes they made on version 1. And I would like to pick up an Ollie version 2.0 to see how that figure looks. That is it for today's lesson, everybody. Thank you all for watching. Class dismissed.